Hey guys! Today we will be discussing 4 questions about risk assessment. Each of the questions' answers will be elaborated for further understanding. Let's start.
What is risk assessment? Risk assessment is a thorough look at your workplace to identify those things, situations, processes that may cause harm, particularly to people. It is a method where the hazard and risk factors that have the potential to cause harm are identified. It is also to analyze and evaluate the risk associated with the hazard. Also, it is used to determine appropriate ways to eliminate the hazard or control the risk where the hazard cannot be eliminated.
Why it is important to conduct risk assessment prior to implementing mitigation control. It is important to conduct risk assessment prior to implementing mitigation control because it helps to distinguish the health and security risks, to assess the dangers displayed inside the workplace, to assess the viability and reasonableness of existing control measures. Doing the risk assessment first is more important than risk mitigation because it is important to evaluate, observe, and identify the hazard first before making an action and at the same time eliminate or reduce the risk. To further explain my answer, I will use this OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, and act loop. So again, mas important na mauna ang risk assessment because for you to observe, to evaluate, and identify the risk first before you orient yourself to gather the data and decide and act how to solve the problem or to reduce and eliminate the risk.
What outcomes would you expect when mitigation is based on a true risk assessment? The outcomes would probably have an avoidance of risk present by having a strategy to plan and diminish the impacts of dangers by identifying, assessing, and mitigating risk to scope, timetable, cost, and quality on a venture, and additionally to have a planning, developing options and actions to enhance opportunities and reduce threats. So basically, it can have a risk identification and analysis, avoidance of risk present, tapos maplanuhan siya kung ano yung dapat gawin at upang mas mapahusay at kung paano or how to reduce the threats.
What would you expect if mitigation is implemented without conducting a risk assessment? The problem solution does not solve the problem if we jump into innovation without understanding the situation. So the result will not be successful but only a temporary fix. That's why conducting a risk assessment is important task to understand and to identify the problem's root to fix the trouble completely. Sabihin sa sagot na ito, halimbawa pag meron kang lagnat, sore throat, or bad breath, nag-self-diagnose ka at nag-jump ng conclusion, bumili ng gamot kasi akala mo sore throat lang yon, akala mo lagnat lang yon, or bad breath lang yon, imbis na nagpa-check up ka sa doktor at malaman na tonsillitis pala yon, lumala yung sakit mo. So, the same sa risk assessment or yung pag-conduct mo sa risk assessment, kinakailangan mo na i-evaluate or alamin talaga ng maayos kung ano talaga yung problema para ma-fix mo agad yung problema sa workplace. So, yun.
So for the last question, give at least 2 examples of tools which you can use to conduct a risk assessment. First is the SWOT analysis, or the strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and second is the checklist analysis. These tools can be used to conduct a risk assessment. It helps to determine the risk and the checklist of the risk categories that is used to come up with additional risk for the project. The first tool, which is the SWOT analysis, can be used to identify and take advantage of a variety of strengths and opportunities while also combating its weaknesses and threats. The second tool, which is the checklist analysis, is the most commonly used method. It is a structured process for hazard or risk assessment. Checklist analysis can be used to evaluate process and behaviors.
So these are the steps for the risk assessment.
I'd like to give credits to HSA channel for the video that we used that shows illustration on how to assess the risk using the steps.
Risk assessment. Controlling dangers at work is no different from tackling any other task. You need to recognize the problem, decide who might be hurt and how seriously, decide what needs to be done to prevent harm, and put the solutions into practice. This risk-based approach will help you to manage the health and safety of your employees and get the balance right between the size of any health and safety problems you may have and what has to be done about them. You should consult with your employees when doing your risk assessments, as they are most familiar with their workplace and their work activities. There are 3 basic steps to risk assessment. Step 1. Look at the hazards. Take a pen and paper. Start at the entrance and work your way through your workplace. In each area, have a good look at the workplace and the work that is being done. Look at the tools, equipment, materials, and the work methods. Write down what can cause harm to people. These are the hazards. Step 2. Decide who might be harmed and how. For each hazard, ask yourself, how could somebody be harmed and how likely is it to happen? Then ask, what would the severity of the injury or ill health be? Now look at the precautions that you already have in place. These are your control measures. Step 3. Evaluate the risks and decide whether the existing control measures are adequate or whether more needs to be done. Assess the level of risk. For example, low, medium, or high. Decide if you need to put additional control measures in place or amend the system of work. Talk to your employees and put the control measures in place. Check on a regular basis that the controls are working. You must record your findings and review your risk assessments regularly.